Welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast, featuring advice and interviews about athlete branding. Learn how marketing, public relations, and broadcasting can grow your brand. We also have special episodes to talk about recent news, events, and anything in the world of sports. The podcast is sponsored by Pliable, a versatile marketing, PR, and broadcasting company that identifies opportunities and creates tailored content for its clients. Now it's time to roll. Here's your host, Greg Glenn.
Thanks and welcome here to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast, sponsored by Pliable, where we're always ready to roll. And today we're rolling with an episode. We're talking about name, image, and likeness opportunities. And our guest today is Dr. Eric Simeon, and he is with me from the Harbor Institute Harbor Sports Division. He is their lead consultant and somebody I took a name, image, and likeness course with Sports Management Worldwide. That's how we both got to know each other. And we've been able to really find some common interests and similarities in some of the work that we're doing in the name, image, and likeness space. So he makes a great guest here for the podcast today. Eric, welcome into the podcast.
How you doing, Greg? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, absolutely. Appreciate you being here and want to really talk about your background, which is really interesting when it comes to name, image, and likeness, having served in higher education as a consultant and a researcher, as well as an agent advisor. You've worked in various really aspects of education, higher education for 20 years, and you've had multiple student affair positions, diverse universities across the country, including in campus life, residence life, and then also a mentor to student athletes in several Group 5 and then Power 5 conferences, universities, been affiliated with urban and rural institutions of all sizes, multiple minority serving institutions, and then you obviously bring the experience you have with diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. Plus, of course, that name, image, and likeness in sports marketing. There's a lot there to unpack.
Absolutely. I like to have my fingers in a lot of different things. You know, I like to be a jack of all trade and a master of a few. So that way, I can absolutely have some understanding of a lot of different areas, a lot of broad areas, but also expertise in the most important ones. So kind of works well with NIL, especially being that it's a evolving product in an evolving environment.
Yep. That makes sense. Obviously, completed your PhD in higher education administration with Pennsylvania State University, and then also has certifications in negotiation and conflict management, strategic diversity leadership, and then also higher educational teaching and curriculum. You've just got it. It seems like the list goes on and on. What have you found to be most beneficial for you in your education when working in the name, image, and likeness space?
You know what I really found very useful is the ability to be able to talk to students directly, student athletes, and really get to relate to them, but also understanding the system, understanding how universities work. That's important because even though an athletic department is its own unique ecosystem, it still works within the larger system of the university. And understanding the layers and the hoops you have to jump through, the red tape that's involved, I feel like it gives me an inside track on some things because I know who to speak to. I know the questions to ask going into an athletic department or to meet with a dean of students to get introduced to an athletic director. You know, I kind of know the area. You know, just like in any athlete, you know, if you know the field, you know the course, you know your opponent, you know, you're always going to have an upper hand. So in a way, it kind of gives me a little advantage. Plus, I've worked a lot with different groups. So being able to negotiate, being able to make deals and being able to get as many people on board as possible, you know, finding that middle ground that we always talk about. Some of the things that I feel are definitely transferable skills that I've developed over the years, then that we're trying to put to use through Harbor Sports.
Let's talk about Harbor Sports a little bit. Define for people what that is and what your company does.
Sure. Harbor Sports is a division of the Harbor Institute, which is an educational consulting firm based in Washington, D.C. Mostly, we deal with work with a lot of institutions, higher education institutions doing student affairs, programming and training, diversity, equity, and inclusion, things along those lines. But we also do work with student athletes and athletic departments focused on NIL. Harbor Sports specifically focuses on education. As you know, the NCAA put out its updated guidelines for NIL, which include mandatory university education on the topic for all athletes. So we're trying to, that seems to be a part of the NIL environment that hasn't really been jumped on yet. It's, you got a lot of financial services, you have a lot of companies that are helping athletes get deals, a lot of companies like yours that are very diversified and do a lot of different things with student athletes, but not too many are really focusing on working with schools to provide the educational aspect. And that's kind of where we're going to come in. And just like you, we provide tailored, very unique trainings, programmings, whatever it may be for the student athlete. So that's kind of how we're coming about it. We're going to provide that educational aspect for them, also for the institution, for the athletic department. If they need somebody to come in and help them pick up the slack because they're stretched thin, we're the people to come to. We're also willing to sit and work with them and find some new ways to train the trainers, so to speak. So they could come up with some unique ways. So it's not just, an assistant athletic director standing up there with a PowerPoint. It's something a little bit more involved, a little bit more, something that the students can relate to and really get involved with.
Yeah, I found that in the presentations that I do at high schools and colleges across the country is you've got to bring them something they haven't seen before.
Exactly.
They've seen a lot of PowerPoints in their day, the Zoom generation, they've been through COVID, they need to be interactive. They need to be energetic. They need to be extremely educational, and you have to really be able to bring the message to them that hits home the most. I think that one of the things I think about a lot when I do, especially high school presentations, is alerting them to the fact that their social media is going to either help them or hurt them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if they can realize that early on, that's a really big advantage that they're going to have, because you can lose a scholarship pretty quickly when somebody looks at your social media account, versus if you have a good social media account and you're using it to your advantage as an athlete, that can help you get recruited.
Absolutely. And it's funny because the negative stuff, which is always focused on more than the positive stuff in general, that could be something that you posted 4 years before that could come and bite you, now. So if you're 14 years old and you put up something silly or insensitive or, you thought was funny, but, was really maybe, completely out of line, a recruiter looking back at that when you're 18 could say, well, hey, we would take you, or somebody, even if you commit, you get recruited, everything works out, a brand might come back and look at you and say, well, we were going to sign you, but you have this negative thing, and that alienates a good portion of our customer base. So you always have to be thinking ahead. I kind of think of the movie The Boiler Room, and they talk about ABC, always be closing. In this game, it's ABP, always be promoting. You always got to be promoting yourself, and it always has to be positive. Before we jumped on, I was on Instagram for at least 45 minutes, posting new stuff, even just reposting some stuff that you put up. Obviously, as you can see, I'm a Penn State guy, so we just won the Rose Bowl. Yeah. So I'm posting a lot about that. And, it's always got to be something that you always have to stay in front of people's faces. It always got to be positive, though. It always has to be positive.
Yeah, I like that. You're a positive person. Obviously, you have a lot to be positive about right now with Penn State winning the Rose Bowl. Talk to me about Big Cat Nation, something you've created and I know really do a nice job with, and you're trying to help athletes, trying to learn more what that is.
Sure. Big Cat Nation is, as a Penn State alum, as a Penn State legacy, I kind of created Big Cat as a way to celebrate the brand and almost as a fan support community. It just so happened that NIL was coming out around the same time. So I thought to myself, well, this could also be a way to help athletes get their foot in the door with NIL. And, being a fan, being somebody that comes from the higher education side, I felt like, okay, not only do I have the inside track of being able to connect to the right folks to get and speak to these athletes, but I also genuinely want to help. I'm not really trying to make this my, this isn't me trying to become a millionaire overnight on the backs of student athletes. This is me trying to help student athletes understand their value and build their wealth at an early age, and also build some skills, because along with, whatever I'm doing with my marketing and branding of the company, I want to educate them on marketing and branding. I have a certification in the area, specifically sports marketing and branding, and I really want to help them understand how to build their brand, because that's a skill that, whether they become a professional athlete or become a professional executive, is going to be something that they can use, in the playing field, in the boardroom. That's something that they can use, and that's really what I'm trying to bring, one way or another, whether it's through Harbor Sports, whether it's through Big Cat. Harbor Sports is obviously much more general for the, all student athletes, all universities. Big Cat is very much for my Penn State blue and white family, to try to help those athletes really get out there and build themselves up.
So what have you seen in the space, and what athletes have you had an opportunity to maybe work with, or stories that you've kind of heard or you latch onto as kind of success stories?
I'm currently working with one of the, through Big Cat, one of the Penn State Commonwealth campuses here in the Philly area. I've recently signed some athletes from their basketball team, waiting to get the university paperwork back, all approved. You know how that goes.
Yep.
You got to go through that red tape, but getting ready to launch them and put their stuff out there, and start really branding Big Cat and using them as brand ambassadors. It's been a great experience. I've really gotten to meet some great people, athletes, athletic department staff, coaches. It's really been a great experience, and I'm getting, it's opening a lot of new doors. But beyond that, what I found is very interesting is that you have, so far I've seen two groups: folks that really want to do it, and folks that really aren't sure what it is. And that lack of understanding, even after going on 2 years now almost, is shocking, because you figure most of these athletes would jump at it, but a lot of them are very cautious. A lot of them are there just to focus on what they have to do to graduate. But still, I think it's important to get that educational piece out there, and at least have them understand this is an option, and here are all the options that you have within that. And whatever you decide, at least you have all the information to make the best, most informed decision. And unfortunately, that's not out there. And I'm not putting it on any one side. I've seen it on sometimes the athlete side. I've seen it sometimes where the school just doesn't have the capacity to necessarily, provide that. In some cases, they're still working on building that capacity. They have a plan in place that they're putting, that they're working on. So that's kind of been what I've experienced, and it's been eye-opening. It's been interesting, and it really shows me that I'm kind of on the right track in what we're doing with Harbor Sports. Yep. For sure.
That makes sense. As certainly the NIL space continues to evolve. There's a lot of different things happening right now. Everything, obviously, we've got, college football. We're going to have college basketball championships, coming up. And, this is such a huge opportunity for these athletes. And I think that it's really important that we're both in the space of providing the education. We both obviously went through the name, image, and likeness course from Sports Management Worldwide. And I think that was also an opportunity for us not only to connect, but, grow our network, right? And that's one of the things that I think is a result of name, image, and likeness as well. I think about a lot of athletes that I work with, that yes, building their network is actually closer to the top of the list than being a brand ambassador and making money.
Absolutely. And that's the key, because you build that network. That's going to help you, again, whether you go professional or whether you go to whatever field that you're studying. That ability to network is going to help you no matter what. That is a skill that you need throughout life. And building the better your network is, the more you're going to be able to get yourself out there, the more you're going to be able to connect yourself to better opportunities. Regardless of what space you're working in, it's going to benefit you in the long run. So that's one of the many skills that we really focus on trying to find a creative way to bring to the student athlete, how to market yourself, how to get out there and meet people, because sometimes it can be an intimidating space. When you're talking to folks from, these big brands, some of these athletes are dealing with Nike and Adidas and Coca-Cola. And, that could be intimidating. No matter how great of an athlete you are, you're still ultimately somewhere between the ages of 18 to 22, and that's going to be a new experience for you. So having somebody like you specifically, as that could really walk them through that, through your age and advising, having somebody like myself and also you and others out there to help them understand how the system works, it really kind of fills in the gap that I see forming in the space.
Well, one of the things that's really interesting to me is the number of athletes I talk to that are not on LinkedIn yet. And I'm blown away. I feel like every time, and I'm amazed that the schools don't get to them sooner, whether they take a marketing class, whether they take, just a business class, anything, to just let them know to get onto LinkedIn, build a profile, get it going, make it look good. It's not a lot of work. It's not like it's, Instagram where you want to post every, so often, or,
right.
You feel compelled to do that. It's just a place where you can start to grow your network. And that's one of the biggest things I tell athletes. And if there's athletes listening right now, get on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Because that's how you're going to grow your network. I can tell you, when I was at Quinnipiac University, I will never forget when I was on Dorm Road and I got my first Facebook invitation. And I thought to myself, what the heck is this Facebook thing? And of course I hit yes. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll join, And then here you are. And by the time you look back at all the Facebook friends, you've got now, that's your network. And the same thing happens with LinkedIn when you've got, even if you're in high school, you've got coaches, you've got parents that that are going to know you and may help you down the road. You have no idea the number of times I've seen the lineage of something happen in some decade that ties back to another decade or another time period or another athlete or another team that has made it come together for an athlete. So I know that you're big on the networking thing as well. Is there one thing that you're kind of amazed by, from athletes that you're talking to that, they don't jump on this, or they're not taking advantage of maybe this area of name, image, and likeness that you want to kind of help athletes with?
I'm really surprised. The one area that I'm surprised that they're not really taking advantage of is absolutely the camp space, the ability to, promote and run their own camps. I'm seeing it more and more. There's a lot of more folks getting into it. Again, I follow a lot of Penn State, so I see a lot of the Penn State athletes starting to do that for themselves. And to me, that's like the easiest thing, because that essentially, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's what you do all the time. When you're not in class, you're usually in the gym or doing something related to, preparing for your event, your game, whatever it may be. So it seems like, if that's your area of expertise, then, take that to the next level and do some camps. Usually the universities will work with you. They might charge you a little something, but for them, it's free marketing. It's, possibly future students coming to the camp to get other skills, but they get exposure to the institution. They get exposure to the campus for a day. And, it's a great way to build your brand. It's a way to give back. Even though you get to make a little money, it's a great way to give back, because there's nothing wrong with making a little profit from giving your time to people. That's called philanthropy. They actually have a whole thing built around it. So it's not a bad thing. It's a great way to brand yourself. It's a great way to make a little money for yourself. And it's just a great way to really build your fan base, your personal fan base. Because that kid's going to remember you for life.
Oh, yeah.
I remember going to some football camps when I was young. And, some of those coaches I've seen work their way up, and I'm thinking to myself, I remember that guy. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things. You never know who you're going to meet, and I think that's an area that I would really want to see athletes really start to take advantage of and leverage themselves. To your point about LinkedIn, I will say this: you're 100% correct. When I went to the NIL summit, which, you and I talked about at length over the time that we were in class together in our personal calls, every person that I met there, every person that I talked to, when I would ask them for their contact information, gave me their LinkedIn. Every one of those companies, one team, you name it, they're on LinkedIn. So believe it or not, that is one of the great places to really find this, this kind of, the kind of companies that you want to attach yourself to.
Yeah.
And, the NFL, all the major leagues have a LinkedIn account where they post jobs, other opportunities. Where do you think they usually post their DEI stuff that they're doing in the communities? All that's on LinkedIn, and all of those are things that you can take advantage of. Your university's on LinkedIn. This university that you're considering, if you're a high school student that you're considering going to, is on LinkedIn. Your high school is probably on LinkedIn. So yeah, it's absolutely something that you should take advantage of.
Yeah. I also like your point about camps. I think there's another opportunity is to host camps in the hometown where you are from, especially over the summer months. Many of the athletes, in the local community are out of school. I can tell you as a parent, they're looking for something to do. And then they're also going to look up to you more because now you're from their hometown. I can do that too. I'm from here. I can go to Penn State. I can go to Quinnipiac. I can go to these places, and they start to believe. And that's a powerful thing as an athlete, that you can give them that opportunity to believe in themselves. And I think that, by even partnering with the local gym, YMCA, whatever you got to do to find a facility to host a camp, indoors, outdoors, whatever your sport is, it doesn't take much. There's a lot of value that comes in just hosting it and connecting with the youth in the community. So I think that's a great point as well. So
absolutely. It reminds, I think of, recently Sean Clifford winning the Rose Bowl. He posted a picture when he was like 8 years old of his dad taking him on a surprise trip to the game.
Yeah.
And then he ends up winning the game, 20 whatever years later.
Yeah.
And, it's just one of those things where you never know what's going to stick with you and what's going to drive you and motivate you. So yeah, absolutely. If you can make that connection and make that, have that moment in some young person's life, you might be the spark that makes them want to go to college.
Right. Yeah.
They may be on the fence with, maybe I'm gonna go to the Army, maybe I'm gonna do this, but going to your camp at 13 might be like the thing that pushes them over the edge and makes them commit to whatever sport that they want to play: football, soccer, baseball, basketball. And the next thing you know, they're in the league, they're doing their thing, and they're saying, I remember going to your camp. Yeah. So you can be that inspiration, and that's the type of story that people want to hear, and that's the kind of thing that makes you as an athlete marketable.
Well, and I think that's another reason why NIL is such an incredible opportunity. It really gives people that chance to do that. Let's finish up by what you see as the growth for name, image, and likeness opportunities. Where do you think this is headed in 5 to 10 years? And kind of what you think is probably your best opportunity or an area you're going to focus on?
I think in 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a lot, just like everything else. I think you're going to see a lot of specialization, which you're already starting to see with multiple individual collectives at schools and, large corporations basically having their own umbrella of collectives underneath it. I think you're going to see the space, which is quite large right now, start to contract. Just like anything else, when it's new, everybody comes into it. I think about the tech explosion back in the early 2000s. You had tech companies popping up all over the place. And then eventually it starts to dwindle down until you have your 10, 15, 20 solid companies that are going to dominate the space. And I think that's what's going to happen over time. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because, you and I both know this. You have a lot of players out there that are, and when I say players, I mean on the agent side, that aren't reputable, right. That are out there to make a quick buck, that are out there to take advantage. You're going to get a lot more honesty in the system. I think you're going to get a lot more rules in the system coming from the NCAA. As time goes by, I think you're going to see schools start to refine their programs and what they offer and how they offer it, especially on the educational side. Yeah. Again, with these new guidelines, you're going to see a lot of refinement. And I think that's good because you're going to know that you're dealing with straight shooters. You're going to know that the universities where they're coming from and that they're looking out for your best interest as an athlete. And you're going to get a lot of the shady types out of the game, which is always a good thing, which, obviously makes it better for us. Those of us that are honestly out there looking to help athletes, it makes it better for us. For me specifically, I'm always going to do Big Cat. That's always going to be a thing for me just because I love Penn State and I want to be part of that community. But I ultimately really want to take Harbor Sports, kind of to, focus on the educational stuff. That's really what I want to do. And then kind of build out and focus on helping athletes figure out their niche. Public speaking, is that maybe something that you're a little bit more comfortable with than, being a brand ambassador? Maybe you're more comfortable, being on that side of things. So helping them develop those skills, helping them find their place and what they want to do, helping them understand how NIL is changing literally from day to day, because 10 years from now, we're going to be dealing with a whole different animal. So there's always going to be constant need to update that training. And, as I've said to, in many conversations that we've been in, I'm an educator by trait, by background. It's what I spent my life doing. So it's whatever I do in NIL is always going to come back to helping to educate athletes and helping them find their way. And helping the institutions also. I never liked to, I worked in higher ed for a long time. So I have love for my institutions out there, and I always want to help them out and help them achieve their goals.
And as we wrap up here, Eric, why don't you give ways people can get in touch with you?
Sure. You can reach me at my email address, which is Simeon, SIMEON, at theharborinstitute.com. And also feel free to check out the webpage for you Penn State fans and those of you who have Penn State fans as friends that you want to give some interesting stuff to or get them into the community at www.wearebigcatnation.com. That's where you can find me. Feel free to reach out, check out the page. Even if you just check out the page and get some clicks, I'm always looking to, again, build that network. It's always about that. And for those of you athletes, individual athletes, institutions, colleges and universities, athletic departments, if you're looking for your educational needs looked after, supported, feel free to reach out to me at the Harbor Institute email address, and we would love to work with you.
All right. Well, that sounds great. A lot of good information here today. Really appreciate the time, Eric, and continue to keep up all the great work you got going there with all the things that you're doing.
Greg, I appreciate it, man. You too. Stay the course. Keep doing your thing. I see Pliable blowing up across the country, man. I'm real proud of you, and I'm hoping that real soon we can collaborate and work together. I'm looking forward to that.
That sounds good. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Glad you could tune in, and stay pliable, my friends.
Thanks for listening to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes from today's episode and catch up on recent episodes at pliablemarketing.com. We also encourage you to share topics and guest ideas by emailing our production staff at pliablemarketing@gmail.com. We love hearing from our loyal listeners and athletes who want to grow their brand. So jump in and be part of the podcast, because that's how we roll.